The Magic Dads podcast is now available wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube at the Old Cranky Man Collectibles YouTube channel. Magic Dads is brought to you by Old Cranky Man Collectibles and all of our generous patrons over at patreon.com/MtG Dads Podcast. Go check it out for exclusive content and so much more.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magic Dad's podcast. I am your host, Stephen Mahoney. Joining me today is the illustrious, the beautiful, the shiny, and ever-chromed Blake Chaffa. It is you.
Shine your head for a quarter. I'm sweating because it's 1,000,000 degrees in here.
It's a tad warm. It's a little muggy.
I refuse to turn my air conditioning on.
The Midwestern late spring is upon us.
Absolutely not. I will not turn it on.
No, it is definitely the time of year where people make those hard decisions, right? And like you're sort of every day is this game of chicken of will they, won't they?
I turned it on for about an hour a couple days ago, but that was the only time that I've turned it on.
You stand over the vent.
I did.
Towel. Yeah.
Hey, while I have your attention, would you please subscribe to the channel? It helps us out. It helps the channel out. And, turn the notifications on so that you get annoyed every time we upload a video. Stefan, what are we going to talk about today?
Oh boy. So sort of an ongoing conversation that we've had is talking about what we colloquially call bad cards.
This is a heavy air quotes moment.
Heavy air quotes.
Bad cards.
Yeah, and we kind of throw it around too.
Yes. I mean, I am always ever the dramatic person, but I love
Shocking.
to just say things like so many bad cards.
Yeah. Or like that's a bad card. Don't play that.
So the reason that we're having this conversation right now and the reason that we are constantly having this conversation is because I do not believe that the words optimization and Canadian Highlander belong in the same sentence. Let me explain a little bit what I mean about that. So optimization is a very finite term, in my opinion. You cannot really optimize a Canadian Highlander deck. The nature of the format in that it is a 100 card singleton format where you do not get to play large amounts of busted tutors make it impossible to optimize. So a lot of the times when you are, building your archetype, say that, it's a known archetype that many people have played in many events, and you go and you look at all of these lists, like generally these lists are within like 75-ish cards of one another, and then like the other 25 cards or whatever, because there simply are not enough, very busted or good on rate cards. So you have to start playing these weird like tentpole draft uncommons, which is something that I actually really love about Canadian Highlander is like if you pick a limited format from whenever and you tell me a tentpole uncommon card from that format, it's probably pretty good in Canadian Highlander. The first example that comes to my mind is Crackling Drake.
Oh yeah, Crackling Drake.
Card is gross.
We'll never see play in Modern or Legacy.
Actually, I think no, it's Pioneer.
In Pioneer,
they have
play in
the Phoenix deck has them in the sideboard.
Just sort of as over the top.
They sideboard them in against Graveyard Hate.
It's still because it can trigger on exiled cards as well.
It counts exiled cards. This is kind of what I mean though. Is like it's a bad card. Like so many bad cards in this deck. And that's what I mean.
Yeah. So and again, like you had said that the lists have a lot of overlap, and there is a lot of sort of required inclusions in terms of like lands, right? If you want a good land base, it's sort of not a lot of fluctuation in there, right? What you can do, especially if you're in 4 or more colors,
right? If you're playing this multicolored deck that's very greedy, your mana base is going to be very expensive and non-negotiable.
Basically, yeah, and you're not playing a lot of fun lands. Unfortunately, you're playing a lot of functional mana producers.
Yep.
So we one of the things that led to this conversation and where we're going with this podcast is that we see people playing what we would consider to be like bad cards or suboptimal cards, which again, going back, suboptimal, totally fine, but the card choices that are being made, you can see a good player pick out a card and play it in a deck, play it in a list on, let's say, Moxfield, and if you are just Joe Schmo looking at lists, trying to find out something, and you see the best player in the format, or like one of the top players, or people that win a tournament with a list, and they're including a card in that list, and you could potentially make the observation or the supposition that that card is part of a winning list and is an automatic include from now until
Right.
the heat death of the
Right.
universe.
As opposed to just making the conscious decision to be like, eh, that card, I'm going to explore other options.
Or talk to people.
Oh yes, that's another very very good point. Is like instead of just assuming that because that one guy over there played it and he won that one tournament that one
Uh-huh.
time, you could be like, "Hey, how was that, that one card?" So
Mhm.
something that I always kind of go back to is like
Oh yeah, this.
I wish that when they showed these winning deck lists that the deck list only included cards that they actually drew throughout the course of the tournament, because like it's very possible that they put that card in there and they were like, whatever, I need one more card. Here it is.
Yeah.
It's a
I
Shivan Dragon in the deck. There we
I
go.
would say not just Drew, I would like to see the cards that they cast. Because sometimes, and this has happened to me, it's happened to the best of us, we have stranded cards in our hand that are awful. And there are some decks functionally that don't want to draw certain cards in your deck, and it is actually actively bad to
Yep.
draw those cards. And so like maybe I would like to see the cards that you cast out of your hand. You want as broad of a play space as possible, right? Unless they're like niche role players, um, you want them to do a lot in as many places as possible, as much of the time as possible.
Yeah,
And
especially in this environment, we are very much in like mid-range soup.
oh my god, yeah,
Every
we're in
like
mid-range city,
basically
baby.
every deck is just mid-range soup. And I mean that's where a lot of these like A plus B combo decks really come in and they
Yeah.
shine, because these mid-range soup decks are just built to deal with a multitude of different things, and they're not very good at dealing with one specific thing.
Hmm.
They can be, but it can be exploited.
It's also why I think Price of Progress is so popular right now, because people play a lot of like mid-ish decks and go, well, how do I bridge that gap? Is there an oops I win card? And they see Price of Progress as that oops I win card. But oftentimes it's kind of just like a whatever card. It's very good to be sure, like it's definitely worth a point, but it doesn't go in every deck that touches red like Ragavan does. We're talking about the openness of where you can play a card, right? There's also a space in which you have to examine the floor of a card versus the ceiling of a card, and how good it can be versus how good it often is.
Yeah.
Um, in this space, I think the one that we look at a lot is like Time Walk, where its its floor is just explore, which is fine, but its ceiling is win the game, right? You
Yep.
get an extra attack step, or you get to combo in some way. Um, and I think evaluating cards from that perspective and saying, on an average scenario, when I'm casting this card, what is my normal situation? Like, what is my floor? Am I normally floor, or am I normally ceiling? And if you're crawling on the floor with that card
Yeah.
90 plus percent of the time,
Yep.
maybe it's time to give up that card or that strategy entirely, if that's like the thing that you're doing.
I am all for going outside of the box and trying something
Mm.
weird, but like if you've tried it and it's not working, it's okay to just try something else.
Yeah, one with nothing, probably not broken yet.
Someday,
Someday.
someday.
Listen, I'm kind of holding out hope. I'm not saying it's a bad card forever. I'm saying that it's a little narrow and its floor is exceedingly wide. and very low ceiling right now. But somebody's gonna punch that ceiling one day, and we're gonna see it for the true. Like Lion's Eye Diamond had its moment. One with Nothing is coming.
Someday.
Um,
Okay, so now that we talked about bad cards,
mhm.
in the next episode, we're going to talk about bad deck building.
Yes, and I think this is where we talk about it. It's a little bit less specific and a little bit more like evaluating what you want to do
Yes.
and the role you're going to play.
Yes. Thanks for watching the Magic Dads podcast. Please subscribe to the channel. That helps us out. It helps the channel out. And I just want to remind you that we're proud of you.
We're proud of you.
Bye.
Little Keys.